Okay, so I'm recording and here we are on a foggy Monday morning. Happy to see you here and um, we're moving forward in time and picking up different styles as we go. Uh, I know that my take on history is that we want to learn from it and what's happened so that we can kind of use it now. And so I don't really have huge conversations about the people and, background and the history of the different cultures, although art and architecture are very much connected and related. I might come back to that conversation a little bit later when we get closer to, our time. But so what we're concentrating on are those styles and what came out of those styles and the overall introduction to them. So if you are interested in any of these that really like kind of talk to you and enlighten you, then you know that there are a lot of resources, videos, and things that you can do to learn more about these. And there are so many styles that sometimes we won't be just concentrating on one style. Like today, we're going to look at all four of these, just kind of pull from each one of them. So we'll look at the Christian style cathedrals and early ones, Byzantine and Romanesque and Islamic. Those are the three different things that we'll take a look at today. And also while I'm here, I'm sorry, let's see, I need to take a look at this worksheet that we're going to have. I'll download it and print it if you guys are interested in filling that out as we go.
Over.
What's it?
Yeah, good.
Yeah, you guys like this that we printed, but those people online, now you'll have access to this as well. So let me just take a look at printing this for those of you in here. And let's see. Let's just see if we can just get like 10 copies of it. Throw it up. This is the printer, so I'm just gonna. It's a 2-page it's kind of summary of what we're working on. The answers are for the most part in the presentation. So it's kind of a way of us looking at the style and picking up here. And kind of documenting those things. So when I talk about over here, hand sketches. The elements that we're going to be working on today, those four styles that we're going to do. Yeah, I did print those papers over there. Well, I think she grabbed them already and passing them around there. Yeah, I did print one for myself. And I like you guys taking extra. Since you're up, I do have a sign-in sheet here, so came in a little bit later. Can you sign this, please? All right, so I am recording And so as you can tell, if there's any extras, I'll take those. Thank you. The beginning of the class is going to be a little bit slower on the recording side. Yep. Great. So we're going to take a look at these four styles. Like we said, we're making our way through time, and big events are happening, and now we're taking a look at these styles: Christian, Byzantine, Romanesque, and Islamic in this PowerPoint here. I just want to show you all of the slides so you can see that we have these different sections, and sometimes I add a few more photos, and students have worked on different parts of different projects that I've done in the past as well. So I'm gonna brought in some of those photos, but you know that if you went on online and you looked up any one of these and you went under images, you would see all the rest of the photos and things that kind of illustrate that style. So we're talking about AD, so after death of Jesus, right? Christ, and some of the Roman emperors like Constantine started to convert Romans to Christianity, and a lot of it was buried, and now we're seeing these churches develop here, like this one in 307. The Basilica was the basis of the first major Christian churches. So we're going to take a look at kind of the makeup of that and how that developed over time. So you'll see the changes as we go through the Romanesque and the Gothic and the cathedrals, and starting with this layout here of the plan being kind of like a cross in a way. You've got that long nave called, and you see at the top you have the clear story. So this is what we use this design a lot anyways. Now the roof was timber, so none of that really survived, but we'll see that change over time as we develop and work with those arches a little bit more. We'll see kind of in stages. So we have these side aisles, and the apps are APS. I haven't looked that up. Is that, how do you pronounce that?
Yeah.
Apps. Yeah, the apps. Sounds like something more, correct. But we do have these side aisles that are flanked by this colonnade. And the transept, and I showed you in this picture, is that piece that comes across that kind of intersects them. And that's why I have it over here in the transept right there. So you've got the long nave, flanked by this colonnade, kind of side aisles with the transept and the apse at the end of it, where all the ceremony is. And we see that a lot now in our modern day churches. This is St. Peter's in Rome there. Or so I think a lot of these things are on the handout. So if you could, concentrate on listening and filling this out, and we'll talk about the answers afterwards. That it will be a day when we kind of like finish everything in one day with no homework, right? And so you can see this little courtyard and little gatehouse, but the nave is the central part of the church where the congregation sits. The apse is that rounded projection on the east end, which contains the altar. And we see altars from way back, don't we? Remember when we talked about Stonehenge? We had an altar, we had kind of this horseshoe shape and kind of the focus in on it with the sun coming around. The clear story um is, and that should, I believe that should be this. Yeah. Is at the top of the windows right here, the windows that are between the two roofs. And then the transit would be the wings of the church that shape that cross. We'll see the cross shape a little bit more as we move forward. Here's another example of it. With the same kind of elements, the nave, the transit, and the apse here. Better kind of view of the apse from the outside in the nave below with now I had to yeah, see what that's going on there. Okay. And so this building here at the St. Peter's Basilica, believed to be the burial site of St. Peter, is on the river there. The dome dominates the skyline of Rome. Construction of the present basilica over the old basilica that we were just looking at there. We'll come back to this when we look at the late Renaissance style. Okay. So other examples, it's very dark and we start to see a little bit of those barrel type of arches that are very heavy forms of structure in these buildings. Still, we have a little bit of light that's coming in from the clear story above, but very heavy in the structure of the weight coming down into these thicker columns and walls. And the reason I'm saying that is later on you'll see different construction that frees up all of that to bring in more light and have kind of a thinner skeleton-like structure when we get to the Gothic, especially the the higher period of that design. Okay. Columns with as over a little bit in time as we get into like 800 AD. The column capital here, what kind do you think that is? You guys with me? What is that? Do you remember? What does it say? It does say. It is. This is the so we had the Doric, the Ionic, and the Corinthian, and so there's that kind of that leafy capital. Very thick walls because we haven't yet perfected the vaulting in the ceiling there with the clear story windows bringing in the light. Okay. Other examples and the start of, and this is what I was talking about before, we're going to come back to as we go through time, but eventually those bigger barrel vault type of thick, massive, more Romanesque columns and structures become lighter as we start to look at the groin vaulting that we started to look at during the Roman times, where we have the double vaulting going on, and there's that growing vaulting here that it later develops into. But you'll see examples of the Corinthian columns here. And another great example of that early Christian structure with the inside view of the apse there with the altar, the clear story, the nave, the long nave there, and the two side aisles. I think it's beautiful, right? And let's see here. Right. We'll come back to some of the just other pictures like this one showing the inside of this cathedral. All right. Um, uh, Canterbury Cathedral here is now that full plan showing all of those elements that we just looked at right there. A good example of it. All right, let's take a look at the Byzantine architecture. So like I said, we're going to take a look at 4 different styles. And this one, the elements that came out of it, well, actually, we're going to start sketching too. I think we're going to hand sketch at least a few images from each style. So kind of um, support for the written word. And I have paper up here if you want to use some of this blank paper. If you're saving them, especially, you can do that. Or, hey, I'm okay with you using the back side of this paper that I just gave you. You could use that too, because the idea is that we're going to sketch a couple of things from each style. It's more of kind of a reinforcement of what we're getting from each style. So you can just, yeah, flip that paper over if you like, but use the back side of it. And I did forget and I came back to it to be able to draw something like this and plan. This is what we're going to pick up and plan. Just a quick sketch of, let me just make a copy of this. Like that. Make this bigger. You could use the flipper tool and just flip that. Yeah, I was thinking of that, and then I was thinking that just so you don't have to change your slide. Oh, you know what? That's not a bad idea. The whole idea of not having to like change the whole slide, but I'm here. All right, this is what we're sketching. We're going to kind of draw arrows to those things. We'll put the nave right there and the transept right here. Just, you don't have to put in like every single column. But like I said, you can use the back side of the handout that I just gave you, or, divide it up into 4 sections. These are 4 styles, or grab a paper there and start a different paper. But I'm thinking you could be able to, on the back side or in just 2 sheets, divide each sheet up into 2 different areas. We'll do 4 areas for the 4 styles. Just to kind of pick up some hand sketches of each style that we look at and a documentation of it. Right. So any questions about that? So we're just gonna pick up a couple sketches from each one of the four styles that we're looking at today. And the first sketch is going to be something very similar to this, but like I said, you don't have to put all of the columns. You can just say that the side aisles with the colonnade. And that's the thing monumental. And colonnade is really another word for a lot of columns. Okay. Just to get, a sense of where everything is and to understand it. You're right. I want to bring in here an arrow and, I think I can do it this way. It's gonna be kind of hard to really show where the clear story is, but if we make a note here. See, and I just kind of go like that. Let's see how good I am with this tool. Right. So this is the early Christian plan, and you'll see it develop over time. So it's kind of like the beginning basis of the cross shape and the layout of the church. The transept is up here by the apse, but you'll see in some of the other floor plans that it's sometimes brought back from that end and looking more like a cross. And in that one of those plans, we saw it on the other back even further. Um, this is a little courtyard here that that you enter before you come into the church. But the courtyard was in the early churches, but we don't see it as much as an outdoor, like this 3D view here of it all. Okay, so that's one of the quick sketches that we're going to be working with, just to pull a few elements from these four different styles that we're looking at today. And, just here. Show you what I was talking about there. See how we're kind of talking about a glimpse of those images, and this is early Christian. You can see the same kind of images online and other examples of those churches, but we're also seeing the development of the ceiling starting as timber construction is starting to, transition into the barrel vaulting kind of thick columns and bases, and then eventually to the groin vaulted. I tell you all that all at once, but you'll see it even clearer as we get to the Gothic architecture of the churches. Okay, yeah, here's another like 3D view of it if you wanted to see it in color. There's a lot online if you want to do a little more research and learn and see different examples. of it and how it transitioned over time. Here are some other examples of how the plan was developed. I mean, there's the one that we're working with right now today. Showing the transit and the atrium at the back there. All right. So moving forward. And as I said earlier, if you're interested in any one of these styles, as we move forward in time, you can do what I just did and look at all the images and kind of poke around and read up on the people if you'd like a little more history on that and like events that developed during that time. Okay, so since you're sketching there and we're looking at some of these questions so that it's not just all lecture, we have some fill-ins and we have some hand sketches. This is one of my favorite buildings besides the dome at the Pantheon that we looked at with the Roman architecture. This is sort of the same dome, but now a dome on top of a dome. So it's called a dome on pendentives. And if you try to sketch this right here, perspective view, you can start. If you're not really great at drawing, it's okay. I'm not grading you based on your artwork, but if you start with like a 3D box and like make those arches and then try to put a dome on that, do the best you can, and just name it, Byzantine dome on pendentives. This will be this like the second sketch and part of the next style that we're taking a look at. So we have the early Christian plan, church plan, and the Byzantine. I've heard it pronounced different ways depending on which videos you're listening to and who says it, but any American, presentations on it will pronounce it Byzantine. And so we also are sketching that dome on pendentives. These are quick sketches that kind of illustrate each one of the different styles, and you'll see that some of the questions on the handout are also kind of related to this Byzantine architecture with the square plan. Square plan and these pendentive domes. The floor symbolizes earth and the dome symbolizes heaven, where the worshipers are reminded that their final and certain destination is heaven. And it's really, when you think about that theme, it carries right back to the pyramids, as we talked about bringing the burial grounds up higher into the pyramid and having these kind of like air shafts to potentially there to guide the spirits, out into the heavens. Similarly, we have this lamp in place. Here's another kind of digital photo of the dome. And I'll tell you really quick, we did a competition in design for community center on Gratiot and Utica, right at the end of Gratiot and Utica. There's a lot there that was owned. It was a competition, and my student did this. She proposed that the main gathering space was this shape that was curved. In fact, she put it, that's not hers, but we created something like that uh, in 3D, and we did pretty well in that, although they did open up that competition to the world. And it was it was started off locally, and that's why they invited us to be. And then some architecture firm in Egypt that ended up winning the competition. It was really great to be a part of it. So here's a section view showing those domes and how the weight of the dome comes down right at the intersection of these openings, kind of bringing those forces down into the columns. This is one of the best examples of this, and the Hagia Sophia was built around 532, 37 as this new cathedral of Constantinople. Today is Istanbul, right? The plan is a square. You can see that it's a little different from what we saw in the early Christian. It's a square with 4 huge 70-foot piers at the corners. So the weight is coming down into those piers. And this is a kind of a 3D graphic of it, and sort of a sketch to show you the different the weight of the domes kind of going down into these piers. So the Hagia Sophia is the ideal Byzantine architecture. Okay. Beautiful, I think, for sure. Some other photos showing you those domes on the outside. See how sometimes they're perfect domes, and in this case, there's like a little wall around it, and you see little windows at the top of it like that. See the windows that are at the top, so it's kind of letting in the light. In the part Pantheon, we saw the circle that was the hole that was at the top. In this design, we see the windows almost like clear story or around the dome, at the base of the dome. And so from the outside, you can see that there are several of these domes that are kind of taking the weight down from one to another. And another good way of bringing in the light, these windows that are around the base of the dome. Other examples. And did you notice that there was a mosaic or some kind of a representation of Christ in the ceiling? We saw that in the other example as well. So the inside of it, and looking at some of the other features, those thicker walls, still arches. You might have saw this in another, no, actually, this is a little different one. Where we had this symmetrical plan with the square, four, or five, four like main piers, but all the weight coming down into those. And this is a great example of engineering. As we move through time, we're seeing that It's coming all the way back from Stonehenge, but it's developing. Yeah, we're getting a greater sense of where the loads are coming down. Yeah, I think this is the most beautiful one of all of them. All right, so that would be the Byzantine.
What was the second sketch?
The what?
The second sketch we have to do?
So the first one was the early Christian. The second one is this Byzantine dome on pendentives. And the thing about the thing about this, go over here and do a screenshot, right? There's so many different, oh, no. That's why for me, it's like, why don't I just need a copy of this? So this is the second sketch. You won't need to do this bottom one, but it could be a way to illustrate a couple different, is this? This is Bone and pendant, Byzantine. There, I could skip. Okay. I should bring all the sketches together. The end of each one of these. So I'll while you're going there, I'll go ahead and put this at the end of it. Do the same thing here. Like when I post this, you'll have the sketch at the end of that. So these are all one page or one. Four sketches, but one assignment. Oops. Okay. So our second one is this one here. That good? Pretty clear about what the two sketches are? Any questions? And maybe you're finding answers for the questions, 20 questions that we're working on. We'll go over those. again. So let's take a look at Romanesque. So we're moving up a little bit more in time, and sometimes these things are happening around the same time. So as you can tell, as you can imagine, that we have a whole world of architecture that's happening on the some of the times are overlapping and others are kind of moving forward with the building on what was done, in the past. And so the Romanesque churches kind of come from that early Christian. Um, and we talked about this transition when we saw some of the later early Christians um, style. So we have these immense thick walls shaped into these multi-layered designs. The arches are and walls are set back from the front of the piers, which have this layering of pilasters. You see over here, if we can see that these pilasters are a part of this thicker column that rise to the clear story level where they support these arches and with the framed windows. So it's still very dark and thick, thick walls until we see later the ceiling construction kind of open up a little bit more. So church plans were almost entirely laid out along the lines of the grid based on the dimensions of that crossing square. We see these twin tower exteriors, and sometimes when you see that there's only one, it's because the other one was destroyed, but they were normally two. And the um the Romanesque architecture had these forgot the word, but it's when you have arches in front of arches and arches, or you have concentric, I think it is. When you have concentric circles, you have like multiple arches that are starting off with a larger arch and going smaller. This is right here. The type of kind of barrel bolting with layered arches is part of the Romanesque style. One thing. So these are early examples of Romanesque with the thicker walls and starting to see a little bit of Gothic pointed arches, but not in full force like we will see when we look at transition to the Gothic architecture. But you see the entrance here? It's got that kind of concave multiple layering of arches. All right, the Leaning Tower of Pisa, perfect, very good example of Romanesque architecture. Has anyone been there? I think some of you guys have traveled in different places. I've noticed that there are a couple of people that, are travelers or have traveled with their family, different places and seen these type of things. Here, you can see right away all those different things that we just talked about. The multiple arches inside of arches, the dome with the kind of open windows at the top. And here is the Pisa, or the Cathedral of Pisa. There are several buildings that are on that site, and this is part of it. So you can see the back in the background. There's the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and there's the towers in the background there. So if you look at this facade, multiple arches and columns, pilasters. We talked about that a few weeks ago, where it's kind of like looks like a full column, but it's actually a part of the main column, kind of like a fake column on top of the the actual structure column, making it thicker. And these kind of multiple arches there. The entrance showing the same kind of symbols. All right, now there's a big story. Well, before we talk about the story of Leaning Tower of Pisa, let's take a look at some of these other images that we are taking out of this Romanesque style, like the the arches that we just talked about and the two towers here. The massive thick walls, semicircular arches. And as we move into time, they're starting to show a glimpse of how those walls are starting to lighten up a little with the groin vaulting later in that time. I want to go forward a little so that we can get back to the sketching, so that you guys can start the sketches, just kind of looking at different examples of it. This is another great example of Romanesque. So here are kind of the main, a list of these thick pillars, layered arches, vaulted nave, post Gothic pointed arches. So it's not Gothic yet. It's kind of getting there and perfecting it. So let's go back and take a look at what we want to sketch in this. I added the sketching for these styles. So let's think about it. What would we sketch to really bring to us this Romanesque style? You can kind of see that we want the circular arches that are, what's there is a word for that. You guys, for that kind of, is it concentric? Am I saying that right? The multiple arches that are kind of layered. Let's go ahead and start our sketch with that Romanesque. We'll have like a title Romanesque, and then we'll create something that's multiple arches here. We need a slide for this. It's a Libra. So I'm going to start here kind of up. And you were something about okay, thank you. Yeah, next time. So I'm starting this page for the sketch for going to be sketch 3. We were illustrating Romanesque. So the first thing we want to draw would be an image that illustrates these arches. So they're semicircular, repetitive arches. That's one thing that came from Romanesque architecture. We'll see it when there's a revival as well. Another thing would be the towers, right? So see if we get really good. Thick walls. But that's a good one. This is a really good example of the two towers. So we'll just gonna put this one over here. And like I said, it doesn't have to be exact. It's more about representing the elements. That's what I called it anyways. The towers. I think we also want to bring in some notes. About this. So while we're working on this, we're going to pick up some notes on these like two symmetrical towers. All right, so what are we seeing? We're seeing these semicircular repetitive arches. We're also going to see the two symmetrical towers. The windows that are usually arched and narrow. What else, guys? I mean, that we saw from the. Am I missing something? Thick pillars. Thick, um, thick columns. Just kind of add to this list. I'm saying thick columns because these are going to get thinner over time. Massive, massive columns with multi-layered pilasters. So that's not something that you would need to draw, but it is going back to this picture right here. The thick columns and the layering of the pilasters. This is a good example of it right here. If we can get a sketch in there, that might be nice. Just take a look. Would that be something that we could sketch, or is it too hard to do? Do you think? Sketch, guys. Anything that shows that. Asking your opinion.
You want us to draw which part of it?
I know that we want to put a note in there. We want to put a note in there about massive columns with multi-layering pilasters, but maybe we don't put a sketch in there. We just have these two. We have these two sketches with these notes, this note down here. All right, let's see if I forgot it, if there was anything else that might come from that that's really obvious. We already said that there was already a clear story level where the windows are coming in, and now it's kind of developed and used at the top of these thick massive walls. Um, anything else new that we're talking about that I missed? Anyone online? You guys can type it in the chat. I think that's the main thing here. We see the beginnings of other styles coming out of that, like this growing bowl thing. It kind of at the end of this and beginning of the next. Big walls. So those will be the two sketches that come from that. If you want to sketch anything else that represents or put more notes in there that represents the Romanesque um style, you could do that too. How are we doing, guys? We're good? So we're filling in the paperwork for the 20 questions and we're sketching to kind of see what's coming, the major things that are coming out of each one of these styles. And I really love this story of the Leaning Tower of Pisa because the thing is that if they wanted to make it straight, they could. With modern day technology, there was a time when they could have straightened it, but then over time and its kind of uniqueness, it wouldn't be the Leaning Tower of Pisa anymore, right? So the story is pretty interesting in how over time they've tried to justify the original structure. And if you read through this, it gives you some details about the height and the width of it and how many steps are in it. The seventh floor has two fewer steps on the north facing side, so it's kind of like inside it has all of these different measurements. So prior to the restoration work, the tower leaned at an angle of 5.5 degrees. The tower now leans around 3.99. This means the top of the tower is displaced horizontally 12 feet 10 inches from where it would be in a perfect vertical. That's 12 feet is pretty far, don't you think? I mean, think about it if you're standing down there from the top to the bottom, 12 feet. So during construction in 1178, when it started to sink from a small foundation and bad soil, construction stopped for almost 100 years. Also because of these ongoing wars. Ground settled and in 1272 built upper floors on one side taller to change the tilt. Construction stopped again. The seventh floor was completed and over time it was open and then closed and they tried all different things. So they added to one side to lean over, and then the bells were removed and they used anchored cables and removing soil to try to slightly straighten the tower. So first they added more weight, then they used cables and removed soil In 1934, they tried 361 holes drilled in the foundation for 90 tons of cement to fill them, acting as a counterweight. But instead, entire tower sank, causing it to lean even more. It's like, the story from the beginning, it through time, has seen this leaning tower of Pisa open and close because of wars and because of bad construction from the very beginning with the foundation and the soils not being right from the beginning, adding more weight on it to counter weight, um, to help this, the, the lean, to tilt it back up. And then using these anchored cables and removing soil, and the whole thing started to sink, making it almost even worse. So this is where they started to drill and add 90 tons of cement for that counterweight, and it leaned even more, right? So it reopened, and the 2008 removal of more ground and declared safe in 2008. So we were talking about from 1778 to 2008, all of these different things to kind of fix it. And then finally, you can see the picture here with this kind of counterweight here, making it like stable for people to walk through. And like I said, if they wanted to bring in the best technologies um, to make it straight, they probably could, but it wouldn't be the Leaning Tower of Pisa anymore. So we leave it as is for now. And I haven't heard any talk of, changing it, because it's always going to be, the Leaning Tower of Pisa, right? So why don't we, for Romanesque architecture, there are some other things that were from before it or kind of starting to see what comes out of it into a different style. But the two main things, and part of what our third sketch will be of all the sketches of these styles, will be these semicircular repetitive arches and these two symmetrical towers. And then a note at the bottom of those sketches. So like I said, these sketches can all be on one page, maybe on 2 pages, separate pages, however you want to illustrate them. We are going to add a note here for 2 things. We're going to add a note that the windows are usually arched and very narrow. You can see that even this doorway is very narrow. There is another photo showing the windows that are really narrow because of all of these arches. And then also the massive columns with the multi-layered pilasters, those images that we saw from the beginning. Right here, this is starting to bring in that massive wall to get the windows at the top, and just part of Romanesque style that later on starts to lighten up a little bit as we move into Gothic and other styles. All right, so are we good? Moving forward. Well, like I said, there are a lot of different things that are happening kind of at the same time around the world, and we're trying to bring into this class all the different styles and what elements we're learning and picking up from those styles. And so Islamic architecture has this range even of today, but from 600 to 1600. And so there are some elements of Islamic architecture that are dominating and part of what we're going to be working with. We've got the beginning of those arches that are kind of pointed at the top. It's not a pure pointed arch, but it's kind of curved with this little keystone that's pointed. And so Islamic architecture has that as one of their elements. Another one are these minarets. Minarets were originally used as torch lit watchtowers, but now provide a visual focal point and are used for the call to prayer. And then these cupolas, which we see on a lot of the designs of today, which are those little like lookout kind of little towers. They're often used to provide a lookout or to admit light and air. Usually crowns a large roof or dome. So those are some of the elements. Maybe I should. Well, we're not really like at all of them yet, so let's just, we can start the sketches, but I think there are gonna be a couple more things that we want to come out of that Islamic architecture or the elements of it, but we'll start it. This will be our last sketch here. Sketch 4. It'll be we are starting with these pointed arches, which are kind of a little bit more curved than what we would see in the Gothic. And I have a better picture of these minarets. But we do have this cupola here, which is this top, only like this top part. And we'll see the different pictures of it as we move forward. Just take a look and see here. Yeah, I think we have, I know you guys are wanting to get started with the sketches, so I'll move forward through some of this to find good examples of those. I think that's a good example right there. Oh, here's the kind of like horseshoe arch. That's right. This is actually a good one to bring over here. So you see what I mean? It's pointed arch, but it's more like a horseshoe arch.
So we drawing all 4 of these?
These kind of
Or
images
just pick
of-
one?
No, these are going to be 4 different, four quick sketches showing, 4 quick sketches showing these different elements. Pointed horseshoe arch. And if you already put something in there, that's fine. I just, kind of the idea behind it, the elements of it. You've got the arches, which are pointed, but more like horseshoe kind of. I would try to explain it in the first one. And if you drew 1 or 2, that's fine. And let's see. There are other examples that we're going to be looking at, but there's the minaret right there. It's just like a really tall kind of tower. Let's see. The arches and the minarets. And I think that I'm gonna go back. Just the Taj Mahal is really a great example of Islamic architecture, as well as this other dome that we're gonna be taking a look at. So we'll start with this Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. And this is a good example of Islamic pictures. With all the mosaic inlets there. You see how beautiful that is. If you get really close, then you have a lot of these little. There's a whole story that goes behind this building. And
Al-Aqsa.
what is,
Al-Aqsa,
what's that?
it's the building,
Oh, okay.
it's the main mosque in Jerusalem. Sits on top of Temple Mount.
Right, there's a whole story behind this that I looked into and I knew about, but then I kind of got away from it over the years. And I think it's supposed to be the original birth ground of Jesus. And
So it's alleged that there's a lot of stories.
yeah, there's a lot of
Allegedly he was
stories.
Born there, allegedly he died there, allegedly it's the location of the cave where he ascended.
That's what I kind of like
Some
read and
people
heard.
say that it's where he first assumed the mount of being the Son of Christ. There's a lot of stories.
There are a lot of stories that if
The
you want to look
moral-
into it,
The moral is that Temple Mount between Judaism, Christianity, and Islam is essentially about as religious of a place.
it is. It
So-
has a lot of religious significance to
Yeah.
could be the original burial of Christ and I think there's also another story to this where at some point in time, isn't this the building where if it was destroyed and rebuilt is supposed to be the second coming? And so I do, all I'm going to say there is that there are a lot of religious conversations around this
Yeah.
site and this building, if you're interested in looking at more of that. Like I said, we're looking at the architecture of it, but it is an interesting story. I might even bring it to you next week. It's
Yeah,
just,
I know that like Orthodox Jews believe that when the final temple is built is when the Messiah comes.
right,
Because they built two temples there already and they were both destroyed.
yeah, yeah,
But,
so,
like it's like you can see in the picture, that's one of the walls in the background. I can't tell from like the sun angle. No, on the other side.
over here.
Yeah, like Temple Mount is
Mhm.
because Temple Mount is the old city, so that's like the western and eastern walls
Mm.
surround Temple Mount.
Right, right. So, I may even come back to this because years ago, my brother being is very religious and like kind of knowing all the facts of this, told me, multiple stories of this site and I didn't, research it, but I did at one time, but and I haven't gone back to it. So I don't want to say, say things that might not be right. So, if you look it up, you'll see that there's a lot that's going on right in here in this on this site, this Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. All right. So we talked about the horseshoe shape arch, and here are other examples of it. A lot of times the arch had these multiple colored red and white repetitive here theme in those arches. We have the minarets that we talked about and that horseshoe shaped arch, the cupola, and the golden, domes, all just plastered with beautiful mosaics inside. Imagine that would be, take a long time to build. And honestly, there's a whole story about the Taj Mahal that is very interesting as well, and that he built it for his daughter. And, um, and so that's part of why it's so beautiful and has all of these mosaics and, it's become a very well-known building. We, I don't know if I don't know, I don't think I told this class, but in different architecture firms that I worked with, if we were over detailing something, someone would have the comment, um, you know, don't spend so much time on that. We're not designing the Taj Mahal. Because, of all of its details and time consuming mosaics. It's beautiful, beautiful. You can tell by
Oh.
some of these pictures.
What were the 4 quick sketches on it, Islamic?
We're coming back to that,
Okay.
but because, I'm making sure that we don't have more or that we don't change it. As we look forward into the presentation, we do have the horseshoe shaped arch in the minarets, which you could just show as a, tall, slender tower like this one right here. You, you can kind of see that these tall minaret towers are one of the, you know, important styles of Islamic architecture, the horseshoe shape. The horseshoe shape, there it is. Arch. You see how it's like not really a pure dome or pure arch, kind of curves and then it points. Here are some other examples of those, minarets. And, this one shows a little bit of everything with the way that those arches point in the minaret there. Here's another, example of it. Kind of looks like the Taj Mahal. Probably one of the best examples you can see. You can kind of see here. Just put this over here. This picture showing those arches, and then this picture showing those large minarets. So let's go back to that sketch, because these are really the 3 things that came from Islamic architecture, important part of Islamic architecture. But also let's add a note about, let's add a note though. We should add a note about the mosaics. Like there's some colonnades here. Taj Mahal is a really good example of that. Look at the color. That's worth, I think, see all these mosaics that are part of the style, so let's add a note here. It says. Just like, how do you draw that, right? But you see all the colors? Oh my gosh, look how beautiful that is. Can you imagine how much time it takes? to Put that together. Anyone do like tile work? Let's take this. Put it at the bottom of this presentation. All right, so this is gonna be our fourth sketch, kind of pulling out those elements of this Islamic architecture. Okay, so as far as the sketches go, is everybody pretty clear on those elements for each one? I'll do kind of a bigger review of those.
So for
Yeah.
this one here,
Mhm.
we're drawing each of these 4 pictures.
Yeah, this one you don't really need to draw the, I mean, these could be, this one right here could just be in section to draw like a roof or a dome with this on top. Yeah, they're quick sketches. They're not real detailed. In fact, this minaret could also be just a, where's that at? Like a this. If you wanted to create just like these tall towers. I'm just giving you kind of, these are elements of it. So you don't have to draw all of these. I'm just like giving you images to be able to represent these things. So it could be just something like that. Little quick sketch of um, how the minarets are part of this Taj Mahal. Like a thin tower. This one's a little thicker than usual, but it is part of it. Maybe we should call it a tower. Is it? Tall, slender tower attached. Oh, okay. So those are really the 3 things, and the fourth one's just a note. So the pointed arch, the minaret, or that tall, slender tower. If you just drew one tower there, or just kind of a quick sketch of this, I'm good with whatever you think represents that tower. And the cupola that is at the top there, I have one on my garage. And I'm sure that you've seen these as you're, driving around on rooftops, on garages. I didn't even know I had one on my garage. It's a sad thing. Like, I bought the house for other
get
reasons. Huh?
Sorry.
No. I,
Yeah, capitals.
it's,
I just said basic.
I bought the house for other reasons, and then like a year later, I knew it was there, but I didn't really like notice it because there were so many other things I liked the house for, and I'm like, whoa, Okay, the garage has, cupola on it. I need to restore it. All right. So let's take a look at the questions together. See what we got. I'm really happy that you worked on this as we were, moving forward, but like I said, I want to make sure that we go back and just kind of like a summary of it. Did you finish them all? Did you find them all? Missing one? Which one?
There's 6.
Could be that, that is a good one. What do you think it is? Because I can think of a couple of words that could go in there. Spiritual. That's what I would say, exactly. I would say spiritual for sure. Number 6. And I think I may have taken that exact line out of this. Uh, gonna put that back in a minute. Hey, look, we're doing this together, right? I'll make sure that number 6 is in there. Whole sentence was in the slide. So you have to grab that, put it back in there after the lecture. All right, so let's go back to the beginning. It sounds like you guys found a lot of these answers. And I appreciate that you're here and that you have the answers. So we talked about, let's go back to this. All the way over there. So we talked about the makeup of the Christian early churches. So let's take a look. What's that central part called? The nave, guys. So number 1 is Nave, the nave. And then we also talked about that semicircular projecting part at the end. I think you guys remember we talked about that as being the apse.
Yeah.
Remember? Yeah, good. I'm so glad that you helped me with this one and as we're working on it. We're looking at and working, filling this out. And the reason for this is so that as we move forward, we're going to have either a midterm, something after the spring break. Don't really want to do much before the spring break. To be honest with you. We want to make sure that everyone has the information. And I like you guys to actually enjoy the spring break. Sometimes we do have a midterm that's just before the spring break, but I want to check with the other professors because some professors have huge projects that are due just before the spring break. Like, okay, I'm not gonna build 2 already. These 5 other projects that are due the week before spring break. So it's either gonna be before spring break to get it done and kind of close out the beginning of the class or when we come back. The problem with having it when we come back is that some of you will try to like prepare for it during the spring break, so it's almost better to have it just before somewhere around the spring break. Okay. So you can use your notes to quickly be able to plug in the answers because they're based on the conversations that we've been having and these kind of cumulative things that we're learning. All right. So there's number 3 is another thing that part of that slide I took out. I'm going to need to put back in because number 3, the mass underground grave chambers found in the Christian architecture are also known as, and we didn't talk about it, but the answer is catacombs. Catacombs. I'm sure that I'm going to go back and copy paste my old presentation into this one. I must have taken that part out. Okay, Number 4, we talked about those wings of the church. You guys remember?
Yep.
Those are going to be those transepts. The top part of the wall with the windows is the clear story. Thank you. You guys online, hopefully you're, kind of following along. Number 6 is something else. So 3 and 6 are the ones that I need to put back into the presentation in that first part. So number 6 is spiritual. So the Christian architecture had provided these spaces, burial spaces, and spiritual needs of the living. Number 7, we did talk about that in the first slide. We had that emperor who was Constantine. Constantine did kind of go against the Romans toward the end there in the beginning of early Christian. And kind of had a lot of followers and a lot of people that believed in the same big movements. So he was very instrumental in that movement. Number 8, the basilica. Basilica is the word, he built a basilica, which was used as a meeting place, but became the basis of the first major Christian church. Did I put that in here? Yeah, the basilica right there. Number 9, guys, what was the original roof? Timber, that's right. See, if you could answer these like on your own as we were moving forward, you'll be able to totally ace this midterm. And maybe not even look at your notes, to be honest, because we're going through it, the lecture, we're going through it in the. So what are the 2 characteristics of Byzantine architecture?
Where can it to?
That's right, good job. The square, but also I would have accepted centralized, but square is, yes, the square plan, and thank you, the pendentive. Pendentive. And I don't mark off for spelling. If I ask you to spell like Coliseum, I even have to look that up sometimes. Are there 2 L's or 1 L? Coliseum. So that's those arches that we were talking about. Number 12 had that, I love this building. What's it called? The Hagia Sophia. Yeah, question.
I'm sorry, it was square and what?
Pendentive. It's like that dome on pendentive.
Thank you.
Pendentive, yeah. We sketched it a little there. And then number 12 was the Hagia Sophia, which I really love this. Yeah, there it is. There's the Hagia Sophia. Look at, like, that is a really, great example of it. And also you'll see the minarets there too, kind of like coming over into the Islamic architecture. Now number 13 has a lot of different answers. So describing the wall of the Romanesque church. I think I have too many words here to describe it, but what words would you guys use?
Immense thick walls.
Thick, for sure, thick.
Powerful design, layering of pilasters.
Layering, thick. Oh, I did have layering right in the answer.
Yeah, that's what.
Layering's already there. So thick, what else did you say?
I said immense, that was in the slide.
Let's say, heavy. Like heavy or massive. And I really wanted to add, the pilasters.
Could it be
Go ahead.
In your slide, it says the arches and walls are set back. Could it be setback design? Is what you-
Yeah, the setback design is kind of like the pilasters. Cause the pilasters right here kind of have that kind of setback design. Yeah, I like the setback design. Layering of it. So I think I have too many like openings there, but I'm glad that we had a bigger conversation. We could say thick and heavy and pilasters and like setback design. I'm going to pick up any of those. You can see that I said that here. Walls are set back from the front of the piers. So they're like set back, which is a part of that layering of the pilasters. You could even throw in there that they rise to the clear story, but as part of the wall design. All right, good job. Did anybody else come up with any other words to describe that? Like it, I like it. Someone else put stone. So I'm gonna take that too, as far as, you know, that goes. And number 14. So what country? Yes, Italy. So number 14 is Italy, Leaning Tower of Pisa. Oh, okay. The distance, the Leaning Tower of Pisa is displaced horizontally from the base to the floor at what,
12 foot 10 inches.
12 feet, 10 inches, 12 feet, 10 inches. That's good. That's a lot.
In there.
Yeah, it's in there like 5.5 degrees or something like that. You know, when I was in New York, I went to a party. It was an architecture forum on the top floor of the World Trade Center before it was destroyed. And I didn't realize how much of this kind of movement was a part of the design. And I didn't look it up, but I think it's a bigger number of how much it sways naturally. And so I was kind of set back by that, but you could feel it when you're up there, the swaying of, you know, of these different skyscrapers sometimes because of that built-in sway, but we're talking about leaning, but still really big numbers that you wouldn't think. Number 16.
Point.
Number 16, there are a couple of different things you could say here.
Horseshoe.
A horseshoe is the main one. Thank you. The horseshoe is the main word, horseshoe shaped. We also want to, you know, remember that they are pointed. So, you know, pointed horseshoe shape could be all of it, pointed horseshoe shape. Or if you did say, you know, pointed is coming back to us later, a little bit later. It's well, but both words are good fit. All right, another important Islamic feature. What were those tall towers called?
The minaret.
The minarets. And I think I don't know if I'm sure of that, but were originally used as torch-lit watchtowers, but now provide a visual focal point and are used for the call to prayer. So it's pretty interesting that these building elements have a lot of significance to, you know, to them. How about number 18? What's that one called we were saying?
Dome of the Rock.
The Dome of the Rock. Although you had a different name for it.
Aqsa.
I probably couldn't pronounce it, so I didn't.
The
Thank you.
dome, the Dome of the Rock, it's just the dome, the mosque that it sits on is Allah.
Number 19, and where is it located?
Jerusalem.
It is Jerusalem. Yep, Jerusalem. And then number 20, one of my favorites. You can see that I put a little bit more in there about it. The inlaid stone pattern. And perfect balance of space and mass. All right, look at that. 4 different styles that we concentrated on today. And my tooth is sore, but when I do something else, it kind of takes my mind off it. So this is a good thing. Right, so good job, guys. We have the 20 questions. We have the 4 different like sketches of those elements that we picked up from discussion of those 4 styles. Any questions about those sketches or anything that any of the 20 questions that we went over? And so for any of these topics and things that we've done, if we've got the internet at our fingertips, if you're interested in knowing more about the background of these, there are some significant buildings that we looked at today and different things that have happened over those early years, AD years. You'll see that AD stays on some of the earlier numbers for the years, but that kind of drops a little later and now we could say that we're in 2025 AD, right? Anyways, guys, have a really great week. Nice job I'm really impressed by your sketches. We're gonna go ahead and stop the recording.